In this video, I'm going to teach you 3 fundamental principles that I use to make my sparring a whole lot easier. If you keep these 3 fundamental principles at the forefront of your mind whilst you're sparring, then you'll find you'll be able to hit and not get hit a whole lot easier. The first fundamental principle is using your lead foot to measure range as opposed to your jab or any other punches, or just guessing that you're in range. Okay, so when you're sparring, think about using your lead foot to gauge where your opponent is. They're usually in range when your lead foot is pretty much in line with theirs. So their lead foot is like here, and your lead foot is right there. To make this easier for yourself and for it to be more successful, you need to keep your weight back as you do this. So you stay in the safety zone for much longer. You don't put your head in range to try and measure with the lead foot. I'm not like leaning forward with it. I'm not going to creep my front foot as close as I can, like this, whilst keeping my weight back. So that means my head can stay out of range. I can get my feet into range, so then I know I can throw my punches and they will land when I go to do so. Okay, so measuring with the lead foot is super important. Use your lead foot as opposed to just assuming that you're in range. If you just assume that you're in range, you'll probably get countered. But if you use your lead foot to creep closer whilst keeping your weight back and using feints on the way in to distract them, then once you know that lead foot's close enough, that means you can land your punches. If the lead foot isn't close enough, or both your feet aren't close enough, then you're either going to fall in because you're going to try reach and they're going to move back, or you're just never going to be able to reach them anyway because you won't be able to gauge that range properly. Okay, so use the lead foot, creep into range. And another thing as well, whilst you're using that lead foot to creep into range, you need to keep your back foot following it. So maintain your stance, just shift your weight further back like this as you're creeping in. Reason why is when that back foot's further in closer to your opponent, that means that you have full leverage. You have that proper base to start the kinetic chain and throw your punches. If you leave your rear foot behind and you just creep your front foot in, then when you go to throw your shots, you have to fall in because you can't rotate your hips. You can't close your hips when my back foot is too far over here, okay? Because it's just my hip flexors stopping me from doing that. Get my back foot closer as I'm creeping in. Then it's set, ready to fire punches without me falling forwards. Method number 2 is using constant movement to get into the flow state. The flow state only really happens with constant movement. Well, that's what I've found anyway. It's like if I'm constantly moving like this, just taking my head off the center line, then I'm actually setting up a good sort of leverage to throw my punches. For example, if I'm slipping here, I'm slipping left to right and I go to slip here, I can throw a lot of punches off that slip. And that means that I'm being defensively responsible as I'm closing the range and I'm setting up my punches. Okay, so using constant head movement as you're moving around means that you'll be able to get into that flow state a little bit better. All right, so practice moving your head, throwing punches off that rotation. So if I'm slipping this way, I'm coming back this way to throw my shots. I'm slipping this way, coming back this way to throw my shots. Okay, I'm using that constant movement to flow stuff together. An example of where this doesn't work is if you're extremely static like this and you're just marching them down, then you've just got to throw punches off that static movement and you'll probably get disrupted because you're not moving. Your opponent has way more time to throw their shots because you're a static target. But if you're constantly moving, then everything will just start flowing together. Okay, so practice when you're sparring. Your head are moving, your feet are moving, you're using feints, and then from there, that's when you start throwing your punches. Okay, so yeah, that's how you sort of access the flow state, is just using constant movement. Using this constant movement increases your luck, because luck is where opportunity meets preparedness. Okay, so if I'm always prepared, I'm always moving, then opportunities will present themselves more lightly. I wouldn't mean to slip their right hand and come back with a lead hook counter. I would just happen to be slipping, and then that opportunity, it looks like luck, but in reality, I'm just using the flow state, that constant flow of movement, to set up the punches and make them do things that they don't want to do so I can counter. Method 3, I learned probably a couple years ago, and I learned it in a sparring session myself when I was having trouble sparring. I just kept kind of getting bullied around the ring a little bit, because my automatic thought for defending a punch was to just step out of range, which is the best way of defending. But it means that if you've got a good pressure fighter on you and they're just cutting off the ring all the time, you're just going to get overwhelmed and you're just going to get beaten up. So instead, when someone's like pressuring you, don't go back. Like this is a super valuable bit of advice, by the way. When they come forward, just throw a punch. Like just throw a right hand like that, or throw an overhand right, taking your head off the center line. Catch them as they're coming in, right? As opposed to just stepping out of range and like trying to move away from them all the time. Why don't you just stamp your authority, stay in the center of the ring, let them come to you? You want engagement, right? And engagement comes when they're coming into range. So when they're coming into range, make sure they meet your knuckles on the way in. That's how actually a slugger beats a pressure fighter. The pressure fighter is always trying to put pressure on the slugger, and the slugger just wants them to come forward. They want someone to come forward because they want to walk them onto big punches. Because when you're walking someone onto something, you're maximizing your own power, because it's like two things are colliding, going in opposite directions. Whereas if you're just going back all the time, you're taking away that power that you have, because you're trying to step away and throw punches instead of just standing there and throwing as they come forward. So method number 3, just don't run away. Just stand your ground and throw punches as they come forward. Like, the worst that happens is you get punched in the face. No biggie. All right, to summarize then, method number 1 was measure with your lead foot. So get in the center of the ring, use your lead foot to measure the range as you're coming forward, and then you can spring off your back foot, throw your punches once you know you're in range. Method number 2 was use that constant movement to get into a flow state so that you increase your chances of luck by happening to slip one of their punches, and then automatically, because you're in that flow state, coming back with counters. And method number 3 was holding your ground, not just going back and running away. Just standing your ground and throwing punches as they come in, maximizing your own power. These tricks are based off ring IQ, okay, but your ring IQ is useless if you haven't got sharp tools. So you need good fundamentals, good solid punching technique, good footwork, and I've broken down how to do that super in depth in my free Boxamentals masterclass. It's linked in the description, so go get it. It's definitely worth it. All right, bye.